Okay, so we're going from Crash Bandicoot, a game that was made specifically for the PlayStation with that console in mind, now to a compilation of games made for a system that was around before the PlayStation was even conceived as an idea. We've got Intellivision Lives on the PlayStation 2, of course. Now, what's an Intellivision? Well, we could have a whole video series dedicated just to that system, so I'll keep it short and sweet since this is supposed to be about PlayStation after all.
This is an Atari 2600. It was the first massive hit in the home video game console market. In the late 70s and early 80s, this was the king of consoles. But naturally, that meant there was going to be competition. In 1980, after a short test market run, the Intellivision launched in North America to go head-to-head with Atari. It was a fairly innovative system for the time, introducing a number of features to the home console market. It had the graphical edge over Atari and a way more complex controller, featuring 16 buttons compared to Atari's 1.
And around 2 decades later we get this, Intellivision Lives. Now this was released on PC in the mid-90s at some point, but that does have a slightly different selection of games and a different presentation to the PS2 version. This is its whole own thing. Now I do just want to say, this right here is my first experience with Intellivision games. I had an Atari 2600, I still do in fact, but I've never played these games on an Intellivision, so this is my first experience with them, so I'm just saying that this video is focusing on the PlayStation 2 compilation game Intellivision Lives, so it may not necessarily be the best representation of a lot of these titles. Also, it's worth noting that a lot of big name games on the Intellivision aren't on this compilation because of licensing issues, such as Pac-Man. Also, the sports games had licensing back then, so football would be like NFL football, for example. Most of them are here, but they've had any of the licensed stuff taken out of the titles or in the game, so they should still be functional, I think. But enough chatter, let's get to it.
You were my love.
Okay, so the very first thing you notice is the game will start singing to you. I'm sure some out there will find this fun and quirky, but this music will keep playing even through the games you're playing, and I don't know, I guess it's just not for me, so the first thing I did was find the volume control and turn that right down to 0. Much better. Now what you're looking at here is Hal's Pizza, which serves as the main menu for Intellivision Lives. Arcade machines littered about the joint take you to certain categories of video games, which you can select from and play. There is a jukebox in the corner which is used for the settings, even non-audio related ones, and some pictures on the wall which will take you to a couple of short documentary / bonus feature style videos.
Here I was, working for Mattel Toy Company, and Mattel had come out with this big innovation of open job posting, and I went down to the cafeteria, and there's this whole
So here we've got some interviews of game developers, which is actually pretty interesting. There's not enough games out there that do something like this. These are the people responsible for these games existing, and it's nice to see them get some time to talk about it. I want more DVD-style bonus features like this in video games. It's always concept art 99% of the time. The other video here is a History of Intellivision presentation.
Intellivision skyrocketed. The video game wars had begun. During 1981, Mattel hired programmers as fast as possible to meet the demand for more games. This was a new industry, so enthusiasm and energy were more important than experience.
Well, I now know a lot more about Intellivision, so good job, I guess.
For many, designing Intellivision games was their first job. A TV Guide profile of the Intellivision programmers dubbed them the Blue Sky Rangers.
You can also view the box art, instructions, and even get production notes on each game. That's pretty cool. Believe it or not, there's even unlockables. Certain games will have objectives which you can achieve, which will unlock unreleased games and TV commercials, which for no reason at all are at a ludicrously low volume compared to absolutely everything else. What happened here? I can't hear a thing. Now, you probably noticed earlier that the Intellivision controller is nothing like a PlayStation controller, and if you're using the D-pad for movement, then you actually end up with less buttons on the PS2 than the Intellivision. The solution? You can press the select button in any game to bring up a giant Intellivision controller that you can scroll through and press buttons on. If you think it looks awkward, well, we'll see. So let's move on to the main meat of this package, and you know that's the games. So first up, we're going to start with the Space Games arcade machine. First up, it's Astro Smash. It's raining rocks, or asteroids I guess. You play as that. Shoot the rocks, get points. Any rock that hits the floor takes points away. There are these weird things that spin and kill you if they hit the ground, and what looks like shooting stars that are magnetically attracted to you and kill you if they touch you. The game gets more intense as your score increases, and at one point I had a UFO appear, but I have no idea how I did it. It plays to all the strengths of the time period. I'd say it's pretty fun overall. It's a good game. Next up, we got Space Armada. You really need me to tell you? It's Space Invaders, there's just a bit less on screen and everything's bigger. There's not a lot more to say. Space Battle. Now there's some kind of radar map screen with dots moving about. I think I'm deploying fleets of ships, but I'm not completely sure. This is the first example you can see of the on-screen controller in action, and it's awkward and intrusive to say the least. It's huge. The battle screens look like they could be fun, but I always die instantly and just can't figure out what's going on. Space Hawk. This is an Asteroids clone, if you couldn't tell already. It does feel clunkier and less responsive though. You can change the movement settings with the virtual controller, which is a pretty nice feature. It's kinda hard to explain why, but so far this is the one that feels like space the most. For something so simple, it has an atmosphere. It's okay.
Space Spartan.
It speaks!
Hello, Commander. Computer reporting.
It starts off on a grid, which I think is supposed to be a map. Selecting certain tiles will take you to a first-person view where you can shoot TIE fighters. I mean, really, what else are they? The voiceover is trying to tell me what's going on, but I can't connect what's on screen to what's being said. It's confusing, but ambitious.
Starbase 3 under attack.
Star Strike. This is the Death Star trench scene from the first Star Wars movie. The 3D illusion works fairly well, and the third-person view is in line with a lot of present-day games, so it's ahead of its time in terms of that. But it's hard to figure out where the enemies are in relation to you. I can't tell if they're in front of me or behind me. They're also the same colour as you, which makes it even less easy on the eyes when trying to pay attention to them. It all ended for me when I couldn't figure out how to restart the game after dying. And that's it for the Space Games. A lot of them were ahead of their time, if a little difficult to understand. But interestingly, it's the one that shows little innovation, but great execution that stands out. Astro Smash is by far my favourite one in this category. It's the only one I actually went back to play a second time. Now I've got kids games. Boy, these look fun. Crosswords. Now I think this is supposed to be a form of Scrabble. Believe it or not, it's not easy to control. I just can't quite figure out what I'm doing. Factor fun. Not really two words I'd choose to put together, but okay. Nothing seems to do what it says. These numbers just appear from random button mashing. I'm not putting them in there on purpose. And what the hell am I supposed to be anyway? Frog Bog. It's frogs and flies. You jump across the lily pads and time your tongue in line with the flies to eat them and get points. How this specifically belongs to the kids section, I don't know, but it is a classic example of Intellivision's graphical capabilities over the 2600. Sadly, compared to the 2600, it's a lot more clunky to play and just doesn't feel responsive. I don't feel like I'm doing half of what's happening on screen. Mathmaster. It's a 2-player only game, and each player is what I assume to be a gorilla. The only way to pass animals blocking your route is to solve a maths problem. Pretty dull, but it's functional. Memory fun. Just a typical match in pairs game that appears to be set in space. It's very slow paced and the arrow doesn't move smoothly. It's like every square is magnetically pulling the arrow towards itself every time you try to move it. Next up, Sharpshoot. Now this is a 4-in-1 game, so we've now got a compilation within a compilation. The first game is football passing, which is exactly what it sounds like. You pass the ball, and if you're successful, you get points. It feels like it would actually be a good start to a full football game. It's a shame that all you can do is pass. Then we've got Space Gunner. Once again, it's the perfect title, and once again, it's a shame that what we get looks like an unfinished section of another game. You can't move, just shoot wildly into space. It's almost fun. Then we got Submarine. You use your submarine to sink as many opposing ships in the time limit. It's okay, you only control the gun though, not the sub. And finally, Maze Shoot. It's hard to say that without making it one word, Maze Shoot. Each player gets an arrow to shoot down a corridor in a maze. Time it right to try and kill the bad guys and get points. That's all there is to it. For a 4-in-1 game, Sharpshoot is decent enough fun. Everything works the way it should, but it just feels like highlights from unfinished projects. Word Hunt. Now this wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I think I was expecting like a word search or something. But instead, you play as a blue monkey and have 3 minutes to carry letters from the jungle to the bottom of the screen to make words. Anyhow, it's not the worst concept in the world, it's just pretty slow. And the final kids game, Word Rockets. You get points by shooting letters into incomplete words floating in the sky. Now clearly I'm not the target audience for this one, but it works and controls perfectly fine, which means it gets a thumbs up from me. Clearly made for 2-player though. And so we move on to Combat and Sorcery, Armor Battle. It kinda reminds me of Combat on the 2600 but with better graphics. It's exactly what it looks like, but the turning is really awkward. You control tanks and you gotta kill the opponent's tanks. I just can't get this controlled well. Battle Tanks. This is even more like Combat. Turning is still awkward, but I can manage movement a little bit easier this time. I did manage to lose to myself because I couldn't avoid my own bouncing bullets, so I guess I should be more careful. This could be a fun one in 2-player. Biplanes. It's almost functionally the same as battle tanks, except you're in a plane, so once you start moving, you can't stop. Again, having a second player is where this game would thrive.
17 bomb.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so we've got a fairly decent looking map for the time period. The virtual controller does give me a bit of a clue as to what can be done in this game, but I can't figure out how to get going. Maybe this is a good one once you know what you're doing. It certainly looks like it has a lot of detail for the time, but I can't figure it out. Hover Force. It's an impressive title screen and menu. This is kind of what I expected B-17 Bomber to be. It feels super ambitious for the time and is one of the better looking games on this collection. Now I ended up wasting most of my ammo trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. I did eventually find some enemies, but by then I'd almost ran out of ammo. I kinda like this one. Everything looks like what it's supposed to represent, which is quite an achievement on a system like this. Sea Battle. Now this looks like it's 2-player only, and requires the virtual controller taking up a third of the screen, so imagine it with 2 of those. You create and deploy different types of battleship, which only really seem to differ in colour. Trust me, the sound effects lose their charm after around 30 seconds. Subhunt. You control 4 submarines, one at a time by highlighting them. The aim is to sink enemy ships before they get to the land. I thought I was the one being hunted, so I tried avoiding the enemies at all costs. Oops. Not bad actually, but it's another one that's a little slow-paced. Thunder Castle. Finally some sorcery. Whoa, now this looks pretty cool. We have music, and a freaky yellow wizard. This is already one of my favourites. So you're this naked guy running through mazes, picking up items, defeating enemies, and generally getting on people's nerves by refusing to wear any clothes. Now I couldn't get far, but it's becoming clear that I suck at all these games, so I'm really interested in the history of this one. It has that fantasy RPG feel, and luckily for me it shows demos of the other screens in the game, so we can at least see what some of the rest of it looks like. This one's probably worth looking up and checking out. For 1982, I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing, and I feel like I've barely seen any of what this game is actually capable of. Tower of Doom! Now this looks like an early dungeon crawler, complete with a map, an inventory, secrets, and all kinds of cool stuff like that. It even goes into this battle screen with enemies. Like Thunder Castle, I think I'd need a guide to get to grips with what's going on here. I'm liking what I've played of it so far, but I can't figure out how to work the battle screen. I use an item on an enemy, and then I lose that item and realise I probably shouldn't have done that. Utopia. This is neither combat nor sorcery, but perhaps the most innovative game on the whole collection. This is one of, if not the first city-building management game. You could say it's the granddaddy of the real-time strategy game. It's primarily made to be 2-player, but you can do it as a 1-player as well. You control an island, or each player controls an island, that is, and you can use resources to construct buildings to help grow your own little island nation. It's packed with detail for a game at the time, but this control system is definitely not the best way to play it. Check it out, but not on the PlayStation 2. Onwards to gaming and strategy games. Or casino and board games to be more accurate. Let's start with backgammon, because it's at the top. Well, it certainly looks the part, but I can't figure out the controls. At first, I thought you needed to use your own dice to play the game, and then input the result on the virtual controller, hence all these dice buttons. But then some dice started rolling on screen, so now I don't know what's going on at all. I still can't manage to move one of my own pieces. If you do want to play backgammon, there's a million other options out there. Just play it on the actual board. Now we got checkers. That's checkers alright. I made a move, nice and easily, very nice. Then the computer just wouldn't play. Great. Horse racing. I'll admit, I got to the point where I just mashed buttons until the racing actually started. Every time I thought I was placing bets, nothing would actually end up happening, so to hell with it. I have no idea if I have any control over this. I don't know, this is something where the whole point seems to be gambling, and there's not much excitement with nothing really on the line. LA Poker and Blackjack. Requires 2 controllers even for 1 player, but I can't figure out how to make it actually a 1-player game anyway, so oh well. The game seems to work just fine, but mix this control scheme with a very slow-paced game, and I just lose my patience. Reversi, also known as Othello. I haven't got a single bad word to say. It works absolutely perfectly. The controls are intuitive, the computer actually plays against you, it doesn't require a ton of inputs through the virtual controller or a second controller. It's genuinely a good video game adaptation of the board game. I got through a whole game. Brilliant. Roulette. This is the opposite of Reversi in that I can't get this to work at all. I try to place a bet, but my chip just shoots off to the right even if I'm not pressing any buttons at all. It's a shame we couldn't see the actual roulette wheel. Royal Dealer. And we've got people. This game has a few card games to pick from and play. They all work pretty well, don't require difficult use of controllers, and are easy to see what's going on. Not too bad. Half of what we got in this category were really annoying to play. These aren't complicated games, so you think they'd be simple to control, but only Reversi really managed to nail it. And Royal Dealer gets an honourable mention. Those are card games that are playable, they're just a bit boring. Now we've got some arcade games. Hopefully this is where the system will thrive.
Bomb Squad. Figure out the code.
The hell? This isn't fun, it's stressful. Can you imagine this as an arcade game? It takes half an hour for each round. I can only half tell what's going on. Obviously you're supposed to defuse the bomb, and I can make out what the tools are and how they can be used, but actually defusing the bomb, I've got no idea. I think the voices are trying to help me, but they just creep me out.
Going forward, restart.
Buzz Bombers. Spray the bees before they reach the bottom. Somewhat similar to Centipede, but on a smaller scale. It's fairly fun. Racing cars. It's the absolute bare basics. Avoid the other vehicles and keep on going. A wider road would have been nice. Night Stalker. Now this one's pretty cool. You're in a maze and shoot things to get a high score. You've got bats and spiders, but what you really have to look out for is the robots. Yep, they're robots. More variations of the robots start appearing as your high score rises, and they actually shoot back at you. I like the atmosphere. With the most basic graphical capabilities, it feels like I'm in a dangerous place in the middle of the night. Pinball. Well, it's pinball alright, but it's not the most exciting table, and the ball feels really floaty, like it's not affected by gravity properly. The main issue is everything feels delayed. I love pinball, but this is just frustrating to play. Shark! Shark! You're a fish. You eat smaller fish to get points. Every 1,000 points, you grow, so there's more fish you can eat, but you're a larger target for the shark. Just eat, grow, avoid shark, repeat. Not bad at all, but it is a little on the easy side. It felt like I could have gone on forever because they just throw lives at you. Snafu! What a strange name. Don't cross the lines. You control one coloured line, and you need to avoid the others being created as well as your own. If you hit one, you're out and your line disappears. Whoever survives till the end wins. It's a really great game, but there's a delay in the controls when turning, which is a shame, because a game like this does need some precision. I absolutely love the idea though. Thin Ice. So you control this penguin. The other penguins are effectively in the background, just ignore them. You skate around, pick up whatever these items are, and avoid the seal that's hanging around. Nothing seems to happen once I've picked all the items up. I did manage to cut a hole in the ice, but that didn't seem to make any difference at all. It just feels like I'm missing something here. Vectron. This title screen takes forever. I'm not gonna lie, I have got no clue what is going on here. I can hardly tell what I'm controlling. Squares keep blocking all the action for no good reason, and I can't even tell if there's an end goal or it's just a case of getting a high score. Out of all the categories so far, these were the most playable. I didn't have any major control issues, so I'm generally happy with these. Sports. The Intellivision was known for having some of the best sports titles around at the time, so I'm really interested to see what we get here. Baseball. Maybe this needs to be played with an actual Intellivision controller or something. I've heard Intellivision has great baseball games. But I have one major issue. I can't figure out how to start. I'm just looking at a field of nobody doing anything. I'm disappointed. I like baseball. I want to play baseball. World Championship Baseball. Okay, maybe something's wrong with me, but I can't select game speed or players. Someone help me. I just want to play a baseball game. Basketball. Now this is more like it. It's recognisably basketball. It plays pretty well. The computer-controlled characters do their job too. It's not bad. Glad to be off the mark with sports games. And if you thought basketball was a little bit too basic, well, don't worry, because now we have Slam Dunk Super Pro Basketball. Well, it already looks more super. We start with a player draft. Yep, there's unique players in this game. Actually, in-game, it seems to function the same as regular basketball did, so no complaints here. Bowling. I do appreciate the level of detail they've attempted here. You get more options than a lot of modern alternatives give you. It doesn't play from the perspective I was expecting it to. I always gutter the ball, no matter what I try. Maybe it's easier with the real controller. Boxing. Right punch, left punch, duck. It does the job, but it really requires 2 players. Football. Okay, so this is another one where I spend my time mashing both controllers to no avail. Why can't I do anything? What am I getting wrong? Super Pro Football. Okay, this may look nearly identical, but I can play it. There's a lot of menus and stats and options. American football is not my area of expertise, so a lot of it is lost on me, but it's easily the better option. Golf. Okay, so this actually took me by surprise. If you've played Atari 2600 Golf, then you'll know what I was expecting. It's one of the better golf games I've played from this time period. Pick a club, aim, and take the shot. It didn't take me too long to get the hang of it, and it's pretty good. Chip Shot Super Pro Golf. That's a mouthful, try saying that quickly. Now first of all, wow. This is the most in-depth menu screen we've seen so far. I tried experimenting a little bit since I do like golf games, but it may be a little too complex for its own good for this generation of system. It's got all the options in the world, but it doesn't play as well as the other golf game. Maybe given some time I could get into it more. I really like the amount of effort they've put into this one. Hockey. It's recognisably hockey, so that's a good start. It's controllable, so that's even better. I'm just struggling to enjoy it too much. It's not that it's bad, it's just not holding my attention too well. I don't think I could actually have a 20-minute game. Super Pro Hockey, notice a pattern? This is more fun, it feels like I'm in play more. I did get my ass kicked by the computer though. I think it'd be a good game for 2-player. Auto Racing. One car always goes faster than the other, and the handling feels really messy. I keep crashing all the time. Motocross. It's pretty neat when you get the hang of the controls, and you have a couple of control options too. Turning once again is a bit fidgety, but it feels satisfying when you actually get going. There's nothing really here to keep me playing, but it does work quite nicely. Stadium mud buggies. Your car looks like a UFO on wheels. It feels completely pointless. I'm not sure what the goal is other than to get to the end, but it's the best car controls yet. It's not perfect, but going in the right direction. I just get stuck on this one slope at the end every time. Actually, I don't know if it's at the end, because I get stuck there. Now we've got skiing. I spend a majority of my time spinning on the spot. Turning makes you stop, but you need to make fairly sharp turns, so the whole game ends up needlessly difficult. Super Pro skiing. Well, it definitely feels like an advancement over skiing, that's for sure. It's the same general control system, but it manages to work a lot better here. Every attempt at turning doesn't grind me to an immediate halt. I actually managed to finish a course. It won't hold your attention for long, but it's enjoyable enough. Soccer. Pretty damn good, actually. It plays like soccer. It's a football game. Super easy to pick up and play, and pretty addictive. Tennis. I can't make much of a comment here. It requires 2 players. So from my solo attempts, hitting the ball isn't easy. But what more can I say? Super Pro Decathlon. That's 10 track and field events in one game. Like a lot of these track and field games, it boils down to button tapping furiously. Tap quicker to go quicker. Every button I attempted in the jumping event wouldn't activate the jump, so that was a problem. I'm finding it fairly boring, to be honest. Super Pro Volleyball. Not even a normal volleyball, just Super Pro for this one. This is nearly impossible. Other than the player that you control, your whole team just stands there and does absolutely nothing. To say this makes things a little bit difficult is an understatement. I almost never touched the ball. Super Pro Wrestling. I like this one in theory. You get to choose what moves your wrestler is going to use, which is really cool, and each has a unique animation too. Sadly, in this form it's nearly unplayable, because in order to do these moves, you need that stupid virtual controller. A shame, because this looks like it could be a pretty good game otherwise. Maybe I just suck, but I can't figure out how to play half of these sports titles properly. All I can think of is maybe it would have been a little bit more obvious using the actual Intellivision controllers, with their full overlays. Now to round it all off, we've got some unreleased games. Now, some of these games need unlocking, so we'll just go through the ones I've managed to acquire so far. Deep Pockets Pool and Billiards. It's horrible to look at. The balls just keep flashing for no reason, they don't stop. It started to make my eyes hurt. As a game though, it works great. You pick a ball to aim at, set up the spin, and how hard you hit. It just needs better aesthetics. Hypnotic Lights. Try not to get hypnotised. Now don't worry, it's not a glitch. That's the game. It's a puzzle game, in fact, which is not something we've seen much of in this collection. The point is to match the colours in squares by moving either the row or the column. It's a basic concept, but it's an anchor point for a lot of puzzle games, especially on mobile devices these days. Magic Carousel. Now to be fair, this is supposed to be for little kids, as a kind of educational title, I think, if you consider learning what a unicorn is as education. It's another one that speaks, which still creeps me out for some reason. That computerized voice really doesn't sit well with me. Anyway, you need to select the correct animal to start the game. I got the lion. Then you just do whatever the creepy voice tells you to do.
Blow out the horn 9 times.
You can honk a horn, answer the phone,
Hello, let's take a picture.
use a camera, and whatever the hell the other things are. But only when you're told to, because you are a child.
Well, there we have it, a whole bunch of Intellivision games. The sad thing was that a lot of them were let down by that bizarre control system. None of the games were really made with this in mind, and this kind of gamepad didn't really even exist back then. So it's hard to translate it to something with essentially less buttons. Now, if you wanted to play Intellivision games, I don't think this is the best place to start. Getting an Intellivision might be costly and annoying on a newer TV, but I imagine there's probably better emulators out there on PC where you can like map the buttons to the keyboard. Surely that exists, right? I should have done the research before I started filming. But this isn't the best place to start. Like I said earlier, I did like the idea of all the bonus features, but you can probably find all of those on YouTube now. You don't need to purchase this specifically to see all of those videos and read all that information. And there we go, that pretty much sums it up for Intellivision Lives. 2 down, way too many games to go. At this rate, I think I'll be done by the time I'm 130 or something. But hey, it's another one down. See you next time.
The Blue Sky Rangers, however, lived on. The original programmers, many still working in the game industry, regularly got together for reunions and parties. In June 1995, they started a website about how the Intellivision games were created. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of fans who grew up with Intellivision wrote in, wanting to play the games again. So Intellivision Productions Incorporated was formed to bring the original games to new platforms and to new generations. More than 2 decades after the original idea, Intellivision lives.